Do you sometimes struggle with how to properly allocate your team members? Maybe you've got somebody who spends time in the field, but then also works in the office, and you'd allocate them a little bit differently, one versus the other. Well, that is the topic of this week's Planning for Profit Minute. We can actually go in and allocate employees differently when they're in the field versus in the office. Now, if you would just, they're going to spend some time in the office and you'd allocate their time the same whether they're in the office or in the field, well, all you need to do at that point is increase their lost hours to accommodate all those in-office hours, if you will. But if you want to allocate them differently in the field versus in the office, so let's say you've got a gentleman who when he's in the field, he's working in the service department, but when he's in the office, he's actually putting together proposals for the sales side of the business. Well, the time in the office should be allocated to the install department, not the service department. So let's take a look at how we're going to do that. First, I'm simply going to go into cost input, and we're going to go into our labor section, just like we're going to enter that employee. Now, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click on Add a New Employee to put this individual in. And what I'm going to do is I'm first going to enter in just his time in the field, right? So we'll call this Joe Employee, right? And direct labor hours, he's hourly. We're paying him $30 an hour. We're going to allocate this time 100% to the service department because, again, when he's in the field, he's working in service. Now, remember, for all direct labor employees, we have to go into the input hours section. And so I'm going to click on that, go into the input hours. Now, let's say Joe here spends 50% of his time in the field doing service. The other 50% of the time, he's in the office putting together sales proposals. Well, remember, this first column, the regular hours column, is what we're paying him for the time that he's in service. So if he's spending roughly 50%, we're going to go down that list and we're going to cut each one of these values, blow that up just a little bit for you. We're going to cut each of those values in half because only 50% of his time is there. So we'll just go down this list and put each of these at 50%. November is 80 and December is 100. There we go. So we've just cut his total time in half. So in the field, he's got a total of 1,040 hours. Now, even in this point, we want to allocate his time, his non-billable time for in the field, because not all of that time is billable. And so again, if he's looking at roughly 50% billable while he's in the field, I can see here that, again, he is at roughly 1,040 hours total. And so if we're saying 50% of that is going to be non-billable, that's going to be 520 hours. That's what we're going to put in that section, 520 hours. Now, you can choose whether you want to allocate his vacation time, his holiday sick time, things like that, all to this department, or if you want to split it. In my case, I'll split it. I'm going to allocate 20 hours of his vacation time to this individual department. So I'll change that to 20 hours, right? And we lock that one in. I'm going to leave the paid holidays as they are. So once we've gotten to that point, we can accept that. And I'm going to accept his direct labor time. And so on the as we've entered that employee, we can see Joe Employee is now on my list, direct labor at $30 an hour for a grand total of $31,200. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to go in, click on the three dots over here on the right, and I'm going to edit Joe's information. Because what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to take this record. Remember, and everything on the left-hand side is his direct labor, his field labor, the time he's spending out in the field. Everything on the right is going to be the time in the office. So what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to check the box right here that says that this employee has indirect labor hours. And when I do that, I'll now be able to enter in his data for in the field, or I'm sorry, for in the office. So at this point, he's still hourly. We're paying him $30 an hour, and he's spending another 20 hours per week in the office. Now, Again, I'll just simply scroll down on this one here, and that time is spent for the replacement department. So I'm going to put it 100% replacement. And so now if you scroll up to the top, I can see right up in my totals box here, he's got regular hours, 1,040. So that's his time in the field. We've got no overtime in there for him. And then he's got total indirect labor of another $31,200. So grand total of $62,400. So when I go ahead and accept this employee at this point now, we've got him in the system, you will notice that his labor type now changes to both, meaning he's got both direct labor and indirect labor, and we've allocated them differently. Now, we can very clearly see this in our numbers as we look in a couple of different areas. So first, I'm going to go under reports, I'm going to go to the profit statement. I can look at the profit statement, and as I scroll down for my service department, remember his time in the service department or in the field was in the service department. And so I can scroll down and a couple of different things. First off, his time in the field is going to be grouped in under cost of sales for the service department. So his wages are a part of this $166,000 in my service department. It's actually the cost of labor for that department. All of your direct labor employees are grouped together in that dollar amount. Now, if I scroll down a little bit farther, I'm looking for Joe employee, his indirect. Remember, we actually list each of the indirect labor employees by name. Here he is right here. And I can see he has $31,200 allocated to the replacement department. Right? So remember, his indirect hours were on the replacement side. You don't see anything here under service because, again, that's all in that cost of labor up above under cost of goods sold. Now, second place I can look and I can see this detail is in there. If I go in under the field labor summary, again, still under the reports, and I take a look here, I can now see in my service department, we have Joe employee now shows up. He's there with a grand total of direct labor of $31,200. And again, this is the time in the field. So if I scroll down to the replacement, you'll see that he doesn't show up there at all because, again, all of his indirect labor is an overhead expense that we had a little bit later, that we had showed you just a minute ago. So again, very easy way at that point to go in and allocate their time differently when they're in the field versus in the office. The big difference is instead of just using the left-hand side of that cost input screen for direct labor hours, we're going to turn on the right-hand side as well. But when you do that, don't forget to reduce his actual hours, the regular hours in the field, by the number of hours that you're going to make indirect. Again, he's only working 40 hours a week, not 40 in the field, and another 20 in the office. If you have any questions on this, feel free to reach out. We'd be glad to help you out.